Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from a sort of interesting life.com. You're joining me on board good old Narrowboat Tilly, and today we are going to talk about the costs of running good old Narrowboat Tilly. Right, I want this to be a video that's a little bit shorter and more to the point than these videos normally end up being, so to help us get to that point, I've already put together a handy cheat sheet of all of the costs of running good old Narrowboat Tilly, so if you want to pause this video, read them, and then never watch any more of this video, that's great, but don't do that. Let's have a talk and a proper in-depth discussion of how we get to these certain figures. So to put things in a little bit of context for people who may not be familiar with Tilly or boats in general and how some of the costs work, Tilly is only 30 foot long, so that's very short compared to a lot of the boats that you'll see out and about on the canal that'll be between 50 and 60 foot long. And well, as you can probably tell from what you're seeing now, there's not really much on Tilly either. There's no tellies or consoles or anything that's taking up a lot of power. The only thing on board that runs from the leisure batteries that are charged by the engine is the actual lighting and the water pump. And yeah, that's literally it. I've got plugs that you might see just in shot there, which only work off a shoreline. But anyway, that's just setting the scene that we've got a very basic boat with nothing that's taking up huge amounts of power on board. And also, with it being only 30 foot long, that means that any of the costs that are done on a per foot basis are obviously a lot lower than they would be if you were looking at a boat that was twice Tilly's size, for example. So, I suppose we've got that little bit of context in, and we'll talk about a few extra things as we go through these. But to start us off with, I suppose I'll say as well, these are the costs that I have paid for Tilly during 2015. As some of you may know, I have up until this year had a winter mooring for the full 5 months over the previous 2 years up around the Chirk area. So that obviously I've considered as part of last year's costs because that's when I actually paid for it, even though the first 3 months of this year were part of the winter mooring. So rather than get everything sort of crisscrossed over and all confused, this is just the costs that I've actually paid in 2015. So firstly, this has been one of the every other year cycles where I have had Tilly's hull painted black and had a general look around underneath. And this year that cost me £396. I took it to the dry dock out at Wixall and then basically just let them do the rest. Some of you may know as well that there's been an ongoing leak with Tilly's cooling system on a pipe that's underneath the boat. So obviously until she was out of the water that couldn't be properly solved. So rather than obviously pay to get her into a dry dock and out of the water, have that done and then separately pay to have it out of the water in the dry dock and have the blacking done, I decided to get that all done in one go. As it turned out, the leak couldn't be repaired properly just as its own little section of pipe, and the whole of the piping underneath Tilly needs replacing, which I will get done either next year or, well, who knows basically. But they were kind enough to put a temporary fix on it and said come back if you want in a couple of weeks, and I thought let's see how long this temporary fix can last first. And my usual way of not really wanting to ever do anything, certainly if it costs money, which again hasn't led to the paintwork on Tilly being in the greatest of condition, so that's a job for next year as well. But basically the whole blacking process was £396, and they were kind enough to say, oh, don't worry, because we haven't really fixed the problem properly with the pipe, just have that one on the house. So thank you very much, Meister Min Marina, for that. So that's your first big cost of the year, and that's actually the second biggest cost of the year that I've had with Tilly. So if we move on from there, we've got that £396 as the starting place. I'd say the two other things that you have to have each year are a boat licence and insurance. So the boat licence for Tilly I have paid for next year's licence, which was £586.94, so that makes it the single biggest cost by almost £200. Let's see, yeah, by almost £200 over the 396 of the blacking. So you can see then that if this was the previous year or next year, touch wood, where Tilly hasn't been out for blacking and a look at the hull, then obviously you would wipe out that 400 quid straight away and you would just be carrying on hopefully about your life as normal on a relatively good condition boat. Then the other thing you've got to have is insurance, which for Tilly has always been around the £100 mark. So this time it was £105, and that'll last through until next summer. The other thing that came up this year, after 3 years of owning Tilly, was finally the boat safety certificate. Now, the boat safety scheme is basically, in a nutshell, and not in an in-depth way that you should quote me on, but basically somebody comes out and checks things like the gas system for leaks and different things like that, basically, to check the boat is safe. So it's not, as they always say, it's not a condition survey. It's not saying this boat's in great condition and the hull is intact or anything like that. It's just the actual general safety of things like the gas, and they had the engine boards up and had a proper look around where the batteries are and the wiring and stuff like that. And in the incredible luck, as usual with many things in my life, touch wood, I have been extremely lucky in many respects. Growing up in Oswestry, where the canal skirts around the border in a certain sort of 3 to 5, 6 miles, so there's a lot of people that I knew without really knowing what their involvement with the canals was, who've turned out since buying the boats that, oh yeah, I used to work at this marina, oh yeah, I do this, oh yeah, I do that for boats. And so I've had a lot of help and a lot of advice from people like that. And one such person came out to do this boat safety scheme, and I was very happy to also receive a friendly discount on my price. So that cost me £75, and they said that normally they'd probably charge sort of 120, sort of that sort of region for a little boat like Tilly, but obviously that can vary wildly from person to person, and obviously the type of boat that you've got, how complicated the systems are on your boat, and if there's any problems that might require them to make multiple visits and things like that. So for me though, with Tilly, £75, so I'm very happy with that. So far our boat costs are boat licence £586.94, hull blacking £396, insurance £105, boat safety scheme £75, and diesel I have once again put in £50 this year. Now the diesel thing, as I say, I haven't got any amazing things on board that are taking up loads and loads of resources in terms of electricity, so I would say now I run the engine more and more than I used to do when I'm just moored up to charge the lights and things like that. As I used to be really extremely sort of penny pinching and try. I don't know why on earth I just didn't go, right, the engine needs to go on for hours and hours to make sure the batteries are well charged and that's just how it is. But that's a whole other story of me trying to not spend any money ever. But basically, each year I've put about £50 worth of diesel in Tilly after originally buying it and filling the tank right up to the very top. And so every year, at the end of the year, the tank is a little lower than it was at that point last year. So in the next couple of months, I'm going to have to finally pay for a proper good filling of the diesel tank, because it has been getting lower and lower, as I say. So even though I've put in extra diesel each year, it's not replacing all the diesel that's been used cumulatively. So that's basically, I've spent £50, but over time I've been using more and more than that £50. So if we have a look at our total so far for 2015, we have now got a total of £1,212.94. So that is everything that I've actually spent so far, apart from the coal. And this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky to throw in things like the heating and that. As, again, if you're trying to talk more broadly and generally, then there's people who spend an awful lot of money on coal and things like that. Now, I have two things to say on this matter. Firstly, I have the amazing luck once again of having a landscape gardener in the family with an almost infinite supply of wood and infinite supply of chainsaws and tools to cut it up with, which, as you can imagine, makes life extremely easy compared to how it could be. There's the excellent luck of having the Llangollen coal boat, Mountbatten, with Hannah and John on, who you may have seen. I'll post a link in the description to my short film about a day on their working boat. It's a lot of beautiful summer canal scenery and a nice old working boat, so please do check that out. But obviously, with them now literally passing by, it makes it extremely easy, and I think both the times that I've had coal off them, I haven't actually been on board, and I've met them miles away from Tilly on my bike, paid them for it, and then they've left it on board as they go past. And basically, having the landscape gardener and all of this wood means that I don't use as much coal as some people might do, because obviously it's much better for me to just pour in free resources and all of this wood that's otherwise going to go to waste or somebody else is going to have. It's difficult to say really how much it'd cost from boat to boat because Tilly's so small. I mean, there's only 15 foot of indoor space. The roof's right above me head as well, which most boats it would be. So that means obviously you don't have a huge area to heat. So it takes far less fuel in there to get the boat warm and then sustain that level of heat. So that's something that keeps the cost down. It all depends as well on the weather, because if we have amazing freezing nights every night and then it's freezing in the day and you wake up and the fire's gone out and there's ice on the windows, it does happen, great fun, boat life, it's glamorous, then you can imagine that I will use an awful lot more fuel in the fire all day round basically. But because I try and do so much stuff, there are very often times where I'm not on the boat during the day, so then it's like get the fire lit in the evenings and get it all warm, so that's all good. So that's like a day that's missed from using fuel. Then equally, when I'm going to work, and particularly over the winter because of Christmas and the build-up of extra hours and overtime, that means that I spend less time on the boat as well because I'm actually out doing stuff and working. So that again reduces the actual time that I want the boat heated in the sort of core period of December and the cold months. So there's so many things that feed into this, so I can't really put a proper figure. I've tried to put a figure on it in the past. After I recorded the first version of this video a couple of weeks ago, my gas bottle immediately then ran out. So when the coal boat goes past next, I will be having a 13 kilogram gas bottle off them. I've luckily got 2 on board, so I'm not in any danger of running out. But that's something again that was like, I didn't think about it at all previously, but then suddenly, after doing that video, it's like, oh, well, there's like another 27 quid or so that's going to be added onto the cost. But I'd say even including the gas bottle and the coal, you're not going to be adding another 100 quid onto the total price, I doubt. And like I say, particularly because I have all of this free wood to burn, that really does help keep the heating costs of Tilly down, on top of a small indoor space too. So really, I would say, if you want to say add an extra £100 on for those things, we can then make it to £1,300 for the year. But really, if you have a look down at there now, if you can actually read the writing, then that, I don't think, is a bad amount of money to have spent on basically a miniature home for an entire year. And again, if it wasn't for the hole blacking, you would literally still be only looking at £800 to £900 for the year. So that's been a look at the costs of running Tilly for 2015. I hope it's proved helpful or insightful maybe to give a little bit of background of, as I say, I work part-time at a supermarket, and yeah, that is well within budget. Throw in food and things like that. I mean, as I always say, I bought a MacBook Pro at the start of this year to do the audiobook and videos and stuff, and that literally cost £12.94 less than the total of that figure there, which is why I say these YouTube videos are the ironic situation of me trying to live this simple low-cost life. Doing the YouTube videos now for the past 2 years has cost me more than the actual boat itself. So please do consider checking out my books. But as I say, I don't think that's a bad figure to come to. I always say as well that I try to never speak for other people because it's just impossible. There's so much variation in boats and lifestyles and what each individual person might want from boat life. So I try to not try and generalise with these things. So as I say, these are specific boat costs to my life with Tilly and how I tend to live, and how I try to spend as much time basically out there rather than in here. And really, I hope that's proved in some way useful or given you something to think about. Anyway, until the next time, I will finally wrap this video up. Again, not as short or to the point as I was hoping. So, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do check out my other videos for loads of scenery and boaty stuff and new boat videos every week. Feel free to check out my books for the Kindle, nice short boat life books. You'll find links to them all in the description, along with links to the Facebook page and my page on Facebook if you want to see loads of boaty pictures and that sort of thing too. But really, until the next time, just have an absolutely fantastic day, keep it boat worthy, and of course, farewell.